Hello, and welcome to another episode of Cultural Experience Pioneers. This series is dedicated to exploring the latest innovations for professionals in cultural attractions, whether for museum, heritage sites, and travel attractions. I'm Shach Grambek, and I'll be your host. We would like to welcome you all for another new episode. Whether you're a curator, visitor experience manager, or simply passionate about cultural heritage, this podcast is for you. Today, we're thrilled to have Dr. Mujde Bideci with us. Mujde, it's wonderful to have you here. I'm curious to hear more about you. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you very much, Alar. It's really good to be here, and thank you very much for having me in this session. My name is Mujde Bideci. I'm a senior lecturer in marketing department in business school at Canterbury Christchurch University in the UK. So yeah, I think it's been 17 years of 15 to 17 years that I'm actively working in the academia and in the university. So yeah, it's me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. I read a little bit more about your research in the area, and you have a lot of experience and knowledge about experience in heritage sites and museums, especially using technology. And I want to ask you a little bit if you can briefly introduce the concept of using VR in heritage tourism, and a little bit more what motivated you to explore this area for your study.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the main motivation is coming from my background of the research expertise. My research expertise is understanding the consumer behavior and the experience, especially in the tourism area. My PhD was about the tourism field and to understand the visitor experiences in that area. So throughout my journey, academic journey, I always worked on the consumer experience and understand the complicated relationship between the consumer and the market itself. When it comes to the notion of the XR, especially the virtual reality technology, before my current institution, in my previous institution, I was a section director of the master program of the digital marketing. And in that section, in that department, I will start to work on the virtual reality, especially because before that, during my master thesis or the PhD journey, I worked on the museums as well and archaeological sites mainly. And when it comes to this role, I really wonder about how these technologies affect and have an impact on this complicated relationship of the consumer experiences. So virtual reality comes in this story in that way, and then afterwards I worked on the virtual reality. So this is my background.
That's fascinating. Thank you. And I have a question about the impact of on visitor experience. So in your research, you mentioned nostalgia in presence and engagement as key factors in VR experiences at heritage sites. Could you elaborate a little bit about how VR technology enhances these aspects for visitors and some practical suggestions that you would advise for those managers in those sites to integrate?
I think I should also tell about this research. This research was
Yes,
it was
please.
a collaborative research with one of my colleagues, Dr. Çağlar Bideci from University of West of Scotland in London. So when we did this research, the idea to wonder about, to explore the experiences with the virtual reality. Especially, we worked on the Olympia archaeological site in Greece. So it's a very fascinating archaeological site and lots of visitors each year. And it's a very interesting mythological place, very, very fantastic place. And one of the company, a commercial company, just launched a new idea before the COVID-19 and launched the virtual reality services for the visitors in that cultural heritage site. And the idea for us, for this research, to understand if this virtual reality technology help visitors to understand this cultural heritage site in a good way, or how it really affect the consumer experience, the visitor experience in that heritage site. So when we did this research, it was a qualitative research. We did some analysis about the feedbacks, the online reviews of the visitors who visit this heritage site and at the same time use this virtual reality headsets in the site. And when we checked the analysis, when we conduct the analysis, we found out that especially there are 4 dimensions coming up for our results. So the first one was the nostalgia. Special nostalgia is very interesting because in the cultural heritage literature, in the research, when we look at the nostalgia is a very common dimension between the visitors. But with the virtual reality, it has a different meaning. So when we look at the nostalgia with the virtual reality, especially it's not about the ancestral history, because in the literature, in the traditional research, we see nostalgia coming with the ancestral history, the granddad or the grandmother histories, or the bonds or the family relationship. And therefore, most of the time, to remember the past is something that explains the nostalgia. But when it comes to the nostalgia with the virtual reality, it's something totally different. Even a visitor doesn't have any relation with this cultural heritage place, or even they don't have any ancestral bonds, they would feel the nostalgia with the virtual reality, because the stone, just a simple stone in this cultural heritage site, come into the life with the virtual reality headset. So nostalgia is one of the biggest dimensions that we find out in this research. And the dimensions are the presence. The presence is a very common thing that we see, especially between the visitors that they experience. And the other ones are the engagement with learning, and also the service experience. And I think the service experience is something very common that we see, especially related to visitor experience in the archaeological sites as well.
Oh, it's fascinating because it means that people feel an emotion that usually is related to some close family, and
Yeah.
in this case, even if they don't have any personal connection, they still feel this emotion. Fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting to see this, because we're really surprised when I and my colleague conduct this research. We didn't expect to see this aspect of the nostalgia. We expect, because it's a historical place, and definitely we will see something historic based. But when it comes to the virtual reality adds something, contribute to something in different aspect, and something that without any bond with the historical bond, even it doesn't belong to history of this person that visit this place, it can also mend it. So this is fantastic to see.
Yeah, indeed. And if I may ask about the research that you did and some other researches in the area that you did in the past, I want to ask about the pros and cons of technology in heritage sites. It's a new medium that is used on those sites. And do you have any recommendations for heritage site managers or museums that they would need to take into consideration when using the technology? What are the pros and cons of integrating such technology in those historical or ancient sites?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think the cultural heritage sites that using this kind of technologies are really getting bigger in terms of the numbers, and because the people, the visitors who visit these places, they use the fantasies about the history and what happened in the past and what happened in that specific time, and also comparing past with the present is something that really a good option for the visitors when they use these virtual reality technologies. And also it also adds and contribute to their mental imagery, so mental imagination, so they can imagine mentally how it happened in the past with this virtual reality technology. So this is really fantastic. They can visit, for example, in this research, when we conduct this virtual reality service there, helped people to see the Zeus statue and walk into the stadium there in the archaeological site, and at the same time to watch the athletes, champions and races and other daily habits throughout the history. So this is fantastic services that the visitor experience, because it really brings the past into the life, into the present with these technologies. So these are the advantages of these technologies. But there are some also pros and the cons as well when using these technologies, especially for the cultural heritage managers. I think one of the most important thing here is really because it's the commercial side using and launching these new technologies, but at the same time to have a knowledge in detail about the cultural heritage site. Because when we look at the cultural heritage site, it's a big history, it's a big knowledge and a big culture there. And I think there should be a collaboration with the academics, with the cultural heritage site management and the staff and all the stakeholders, with the XR developers, the virtual reality developers at the same time. So the first thing, I think, my humble recommendation really, to get a good collaboration, to understand what is the actual core element in that cultural heritage site. And the second thing is more about understanding the visitors, especially right now. It's really getting more popular, these technologies. But at the same time, it's really important to think about the neurodiverse visitors. Because, yeah, that's great. And we know that there are some drawbacks or the side effect of the virtual reality technologies, like the motion sickness, dizziness, or some other effects, fatigue, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there are some other things, like if a person, a visitor who visits this cultural heritage site has a dyslexia, they can't really immerse themselves into this experience if in an efficient way. So I think the fundamental point are collaborating and to understand what this technology should offer to the parts, to the visitors in the heritage site, and then to understand the customers, to the visitors in the heritage site, especially in terms of the neurodiverse and the social inclusion aspect.
Yeah, that's very important to know your audience, and there's a lot of research about accessibility and the importance of accessibility, and I think that when using a new medium, it raises more challenges that needs to be taken into consideration. As you mentioned, that this type of technology can be more challenging in those areas.
Yeah.
Maybe last question that I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about the future. How do you see the future in, let's say, 5-10 years from now? How would you see the experience in museums or heritage sites? How do you envision it would look like from the perspective of visitors in those sites?
Yeah, I think the future is coming very, very quickly. And in my opinion, especially with the technologies, I think the museum sector, the museum industry, and the cultural heritage sector is really keeping up to date very efficiently. So this is really good to see. And beyond the traditional services they offer, they also adopt themselves into the technology. So this is really good to see. And in my opinion, in the future, I think with these big tech companies like the Apple Vision and other stuff that we really right now experiencing, I think they will also embed these technologies in a more efficient way, hopefully, in this cultural heritage sector as well. So uh, when we look at this cultural heritage aspect, the visitor experience is really important because you touch the cognitive. Do you have the cognitive experience, the visitor experience, the spatial, the physical environment? They have the social experience, or they also have the emotional experience. And in my opinion, in the future, especially the emotional experience coming more important, and we will see these technologies especially will affect in a more effective way because the spatial experience, like the physical experience, lose the importance as in the virtual reality. We don't see that the visitors don't have to visit the place. They can just sit in their coach and they visit the place itself. So beyond the spatial or the cognitive stage, I think especially emotional experience coming more active. And I think this XR technologies, extended reality technologies, will have a big impact on it in the future, especially in the next 10 years.
What I see from some figures that I saw lately is that there is some challenge in engaging the young audiences, the digital generation. So when I hear what you say, is that I think that it might be a very fascinating age for those museums that would combine the latest technologies to improve the experience, and maybe we'll see more of those youngsters in those heritage sites that sometimes they're not very keen to go there because they're not as engaging or experience as some other maybe entertainment attractions. So I really hope about to reach this age of a more experience visit to those heritage sites.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really good point. Uh, I think it's also related to our results in this research because one of the dimensions that we found was the engagement by learning, and especially the visitors talk about how the parents, especially the parents, are affected by their children to use this virtual reality headset when they visit the Olympia archaeological site. So I think especially the new generation are more encouraging the people, their parents, and the other generations as well to use it. So yeah, I think it's very important, especially for this generation, for encouraging.
Yeah, let's hope so. I think that I'm optimistic. I believe that we're about to have a new generation of experiences in those museums. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today.
My
And
pleasure.
big thanks for everyone listening. I hope you got some great ideas for making museums and heritage sites more exciting with technology. Please subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends about our podcast. And join us next time for more interesting talks. And saying goodbye until the next episode. Take care, and thank you very much.
My pleasure.